So with that kind of in mind, and the discernment that we're asking about the steps that we're taking, we need to kind of pause the meeting at the end of the meeting and take a break and then come back and vote online or vote next week. We'll have the ability to do that. So we can have that discussion, as part of our living out in discernment, as part of our discussion around that and around needing to fully absorb these two beautifully, carefully, lovingly created documents for you. And we get to that later. So the way this is going to work this morning is just like church always works. We'll start with some songs, we'll ask about where God is, and then we're going to open the annual meeting. For many reasons, but I have been trying to, in the last years, incorporate church and business together to provide this solid, mindful space in which we are crafting a connection with not only each other, but the divine in that. And I know that our meetings have not been like that in the past, so that's why we're incorporating it into worship this morning. And I am open for feedback on that after we've experienced it. So, we will begin. Are you ready, Matthew? Oh, he's not there. Matthew, are you ready? Matthew, he's right there. Wait, I'll wait. We will begin when Matthew is ready, and we will worship God together. And you can follow along in the packet that's got this, because this is our meeting agenda. Is also our worship schedule. No, bulletin this morning. That's a week. So we invite you to join us and sing, if you're able, to the song "The Father's House." And it's in the orange section of the white songbook. Orange section of the white songbook.
To be
morning. My name is Sarah. I'm the pastor here at St. Stephen's, and it's my honor and my privilege to say to you that no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. This morning for you, as I said earlier, we have a presentation of our annual meeting mixed in with our worship service. And so we're going to start this worship service like we do every worship service, which is, where have you experienced God in your world and in your walk this week?
I experienced it having to take my mom for an emergency appointment, and she turned out to be okay.
Amen. God in the relief and in the helpers, and there's so much God there.
I experienced God in a reminder from a friend to take a night off last night and just rest.
Excellent, excellent. Embrace productive rest. It's like I just preached on that. Amazing. Good job. Good job.
My
Good job
daughter
for seeing
Jackie got
God
an
in you.
unexpected promotion.
I'm sorry?
My daughter Jackie got an unexpected promotion.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Congratulations. Yes. Yes, great.
I experienced God and see my wife back. I always have to heal.
God in the healing and in the growth and in the, yes, all of that. That's amazing. Thank you. I also found God in productive rest this weekend. I'm really embracing the sermon series that I just finished, trying to utilize those principles. So I've been taking, even on the eve of the biggest night of the year, which is not Christmas or Easter, but annual meeting for me, I took productive rest off. So yeah, I found God there. Anyone else? All right. So I'm going to turn the worship service at this moment over to our moderator, Susan Lantinel, for her to open the meeting.
You want me to come up there?
Yep.
Okay, I'm officially calling the meeting to order. We need 4 people to be tellers or counters. Is anyone interested in volunteering?
Okay. Oh, goodness. You'll be voluntold.
Kelly.
Oh, Kelly, thank you. And Cheryl. You just have to count. There's not that many of us here. You can borrow Sarah's fingers, okay?
Two of you are okay.
All right.
So we have, let's count off starting with Cody.
1,
2,
3.
Rob is 4. Sue Mahalik is 5. Michelle? 6.
8,
9, 10,
11,
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. That's not what I remember. So 18 is the count.
and I need
Which 18, which means our quorum of 10.
Yes. Which doesn't happen a lot, that's great. So we need to consent to the agenda, and that's
The first 2 pages of the, here. Yep. So she needs a first.
so in motion to consent to the agenda.
I second.
All in
Wait.
favor?
Yes, I'm reading the church clerk here, I'm sorry. So that was, Craig, who was first, and Cody, she seconded. All right, go ahead, now you may begin.
Any debate about the agenda?
Excellent.
All in favor?
Any opposed?
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes, sir.
Motion passed.
All right, so now, I know not everyone has all of the information in front because, again, the printer is being ridiculous this morning. But we'd like to take a moment here to let Matthew and Julia and the band serenade us and prayerfully consider the things that are in front of you. Your budget. Prayerfully consider the things that are on your heart around the movement of St. Stephen's around mission, worship, building, around all the things, all the anxieties, all the ways in which this congregation has been plagued by this meeting, and put those out in front of you and let those sit there. And then in this moment, I'd like you to dream and imagine how you want this church to be. And compare that to those papers you have in front of you. texted and said, "This is what I'm doing," and this is what they came up with. That was absolutely amazing. I thank you for your ministry and your leadership, and that was beautiful. All right, so here we go. This morning I have 2 readings for you. One is from the Gospel of the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 6. "Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before swine, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you." Second reading this morning is from John, chapter 11. "Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, 'Lord, he whom you love is ill.' But when Jesus heard it, he said, 'This illness is not unto death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by means of it.' Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, so when he heard that he was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. And then after this, he said to the disciples, 'Let us go into Judea again.' The disciples said to him, 'Rabbi, the Jews were but now seeking to stone you, and you're going there again.' And Jesus answered, 'Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him.' Thus he spoke, and then he said to them, 'Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awake him out of sleep.' The disciples said to him, 'Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover.' And now Jesus has spoken of his death. And they thought that he meant, Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he meant taking rest and sleep. And then Jesus told them plainly, 'Lazarus is dead. And for your sake I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him.' Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, 'Let us also go, that we may die with him.' And now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. And when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him. And while Mary sat in the house, Martha said to Jesus, 'Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you.' And Jesus said to her, 'Your brother will rise again.' And Martha said to him, 'I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day.' And Jesus said to her, 'I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die.' Do you believe this?" This is the word of the Lord. Please pray with me. Loving and gracious God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the people gathered here in your name. We thank you for the continued renewal and revitalization, for the Holy Spirit that is present in this place that you bring forth every day. Let us bask in its glory and love, and that which is our mission. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the things. In the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart, be acceptable to the Lord, my rock and my Redeemer. Amen. This last year has been amazing and grief-filled and community-driven. It's been a year of discernment and trust and resiliency. The past year has been God-led, God-inspired, and congregation followed. A year ago, there was a meeting in which the food pantry was being discussed. And the beginning of the end of what seemed like COVID-19 seemed right around the corner. And I sat in a meeting where the discussion was one about the viability, vitality, and long-term stewardship of the church. And we knew we had to do something to change the landscape, and we had thought and prayed for so many years. I'd like to tell you that there was this perfectly orchestrated plan this last year that went off seamlessly, but there wasn't. And what I can tell you is that the passion of one became the mission of all, and everyone in this congregation executed it faithfully. We leaned on God a lot. We stumbled in the dark. And every single person that is sitting here, that is a part of this momentum and movement, worked hard every day. In prayer, in financial contribution, in contribution of time, and in contribution of talent, helping build this back. And we continue to hear God in this. And God did in return God's part. From chicken salad, to guests, to volunteers, to the partnerships that we've built here in the community. God was there every step of the way. And life has returned to our ministries. The God of Abraham, David, Naomi, and Esther, the God of Jeremiah and Isaiah and Daniel, the God of John the Baptist, and Mary and Judas, the God found in Jesus Christ, continues to be with us and guide us. And even in the midst of this suffering and the sorrow of the past year, our steadfast God stood by us, providing for us, and COVID created a situation for our ministry. It was in the moment and the stillness of the year that was previous. It was the leadership team who prioritized the health of this congregation over meeting collectively. That said, we will wait for the science and the people who know better about this so that we can all stay together healthy. And that was a hard choice. And it had a toll. And yet, it also gave us this moment to stop and to reflect and to figure out what it is exactly God was calling us to do. To lean into and trust to God. The silence of the COVID lockdowns, I know for me and I know for others in this congregation, was deafening, was painful. And yet there was so much learning and growth for this congregation inside of that. We went from serving 0 people our first week in the food pantry to averaging around 95 a week. We tried a few things this year. A few of them went wildly successful. A few of them, there are things that worked, but we will never do again. I am never cooking any food in this building in large scales on multiple weeks in a row. That was good work, but terribly sweaty. That's the word I want to use. Terribly sweaty. But everyone loved the food. A few went okay, and we're going to try them again this spring and the summer. And a few of them took off with great success that we could never have imagined. Our food rescue hub is turning out to be something that this community needs and desires, and is really a big part of where our ministry is going to go. So our future here at St. Stephen's is wide open. We have nothing left but possibilities and new ways to do ministries, feeding people body, mind, and soul. So, I don't know if you remember January 28th of 2020, but I do. Because it was a day for me in which we cast forward and voted and moved forward on this new vision that we had gotten before COVID-19. It was huge. And I preached a sermon in which I said, St. Stephen's is dead. And we have this moment, and so I'm going to take you back there to that sermon in parts and let you hear that. It's based on John 11. So when I was 19, I lost my best friend in the world. She was like a sister to me. The matter and circumstance of how she died doesn't matter for this particular topic, although it does for others. What does matter is that she was gone, and I was completely lost. Utterly lost. I remember it like it was yesterday. The waves of grief often wash over me. One minute I'll be fine, and the next minute I am not. And 1 minute laughing, and the next minute sobbing, and for days and weeks on end, not a day would go by that I didn't think about her. I haven't lost my parents, and I'm lucky for that. But I will. I haven't lost a spouse to death, but I will hopefully have to endure that as well. And while I've lost a lot of people who I've been close to, I think that pain of losing a spouse or losing a parent is different. I can't imagine that pain. My heart aches and pours out to those of you that have lost that. Grief is this weird thing, right? It's like a nagging toothache or arthritis. It's there, but it's not. It has good days and bad days, and you just sometimes live with this hole in your heart. I heard an analogy once that your grief never gets any bigger, the box you build around it just does. It never gets any smaller, but the box you build around it just gets bigger. Jesus tells us, blessed are those who mourn. Our image of Jesus is one of comforter and caretaker, the good shepherd. It's really hard when you get to scriptures like today. This is from the Gospel of John. Right before the scripture, Jesus was gone into Judea and spread his message of love and justice and gotten himself kicked out. So he moved on to the countryside, preaching and teaching and helping people, and then a message came, and the messenger said that his friend Lazarus had fallen ill. And now, Lazarus was his best friend. I think that the hope was that he would go to the house of Mary and Martha and Lazarus and heal him. And the disciples begin to debate this because that's what the disciples did. And then Jesus says plainly, perhaps even harshly, Lazarus is dead. There is no saving him. 4 days later, Jesus goes to the house where Lazarus is dead. And as readers or hearers of the story back then, Jewish folk would have known that Lazarus was actually dead. In Judaism, God's day is the third day, and this is when God acts. And Jesus is raised from the dead on the third day. And so as readers and hearers, we know that Lazarus is in fact dead. And then we see Jesus, who 3 paragraphs ago said, I am the resurrection and the light. Those who believe in me will not die, but will have eternal life. He goes to the tomb. He sees Martha crying. He sees Mary crying. He sees all these other people who are coming to mourn Lazarus, religious authorities, people who are in power of this time. And what does Jesus do? In this text, he weeps. And you know why? Because death is real. Death is harsh. Death is scary, and death is sad. And even though Jesus knows that he will, in a few moments, be able to rise Lazarus from the dead, he still sobs. His best friend is dead. There is a finality to this life. I laid before you on that day the plans of this congregation, not just me, all of us laid before you that day the plans of this congregation to revitalize and rejuvenate. I remember painstakingly poring over every word of every sermon I had preached leading up to this moment where I was going to declare to you that St. Stephen's in fact was dead. So I started with 3 Kings Day, and I highlighted that we can choose fear or faith during change. Then I preached a sermon about it being okay to be afraid. And then the complete Lazarus resurrected sermon that this highlights that death is harsh and real and sad. And even when faced with death, the knowledge of resurrection, Jesus still weeps. And so in the original sermon, I ended it this way. So we've come to this week where, in the state of this church, where we are in this moment right there. The moment that Jesus looks around the tomb and everyone is crying and begins to weep. But we're not at that moment. We're past that. We're in the moment where Jesus commanded Martha to roll back the stone and looking up to God, prayed, and knowing that God will do the impossible. We're not even at that moment, because we had those hard conversations, and we laughed, and we cried, and we yelled, and we came to terms with one another, and we got serious about spiritual disciplines, and we took on new fellowship and new outreach programs, and we said, what's next? We had hard conversations about our past and our future, and everyone sitting in this room right now did this work. And yes, we can respond to change with faith or fear, and we responded with faith, and we know that it's okay to be nervous, and that's not a lack of faith, and we know that death hurts, and it's harsh, and it's painful, and no amount of sentimentalizing over the fact that Lazarus will be raised from the dead will change the fact that the old days of St. Stephen's are gone, and it has died. And even though we know that God is doing something here, calling us into resurrection still hurts and it's deeply sad. And grief comes in waves. And some days are easier than others. And at that moment, the point in the story that we were at was the point where Martha had rolled back the stone and Jesus had prayed and then had commanded Lazarus to rise. And everyone is staring there into the abyss of the tomb waiting, wondering, is this guy for real? Wondering if he is the resurrection and the life, and if they were to just believe, would this dead man, their brother, their friend, rise? See, the beauty of this is that we got to choose those next steps, and we get to decide what kind of church we want to be. We get to move forward together as one church, listening and discerning God's will. We get to trust. We get to wait. We continue to pray. We continue to do God's work. And Jesus commanded us to rise. Let the church arise, we claimed. We stepped boldly into 2020, energized, ready to take on the world. And the world stopped. And we huddled. We huddled in the dark. And we sat in that tomb for 18 months. A year. As people individually, communally, and collectively. And COVID chose our next steps. And as scary as it was, we leaned into God. We prayed. We discerned. COVID, for all its tragedies, for all of the terror, for all of the pain, God was still there. And we listened to her. We sat in the dark and reached out, and God was there. We had done our spiritual disciplines and built our relationships, and God was there. And we trusted, and we walked forward, and we waited, and then we moved forward. I've struggled for the past 2 years, the nature of suffering and where God is in that. If God is all-knowing and all-loving, how can COVID-19 exist? And if God is in charge of everything, then why didn't God stop COVID-19? And maybe this is too linear. Maybe the God of all creation has been in the mix in this and all of this. Maybe God co-creates in response to this life. Maybe the reason that God had to come down into the personhood of Jesus Christ is that because God needed to know what it was to be human. I like to think this is it. That because God knows human form, in all the moments when we lean in, she comforts us. God loves us. COVID made us sit still. And in that stillness, we chose to discern. We chose to listen. And God literally did the rest. There were moments of times this past year I looked at people and said, I have no idea what's happening here. It's definitely God. We lean into God. We pray. We ask. God provides. This work has been some of the hardest of my career. For anyone that's been with me since day one, that's saying a lot. This work challenges my body and my mind and my soul every day, and I hope that it challenges you too in those same ways. I hope that you are being fed with your body and your mind and your soul. Our work is so important. It is sacred, and it connects us to the body of Christ. And so today, the scripture is different. We've emerged from the tomb. Jesus has called us out, and we have arisen. If you look at the annual report, we have, by God's grace, been so wildly successful in fulfilling our new mission. We feed people, body, mind, and soul. Today's mission comes, today's scripture came from the Gospel of Matthew, and Jesus says, don't cast your pearls before swines. And that's what I'm saying to you this morning. I know for many years there was this feeling of lost for this church. And I know that there may have been lots of moments in which we felt like we were casting our pearls before swines to be trampled on and not treasured. And so in this moment here, in all of this, we present to you this annual meeting and this budget report that shows you should cast your pearls here. One more thing though, I had a conversation this morning, very wise person, and she said to me, make sure you're going towards something and not away from something. Make sure that we are going towards something and not away from something. So, in this day and in this conversation, and where we are figuring out where to cast our pearls, make sure you're going towards something and not away. Cast them towards God. And with all that, let the people say amen.
Amen.
You are love.
you off with some triangle breathing. So we're gonna take a deep breath in and hold it for 4 seconds, or take a deep breath in for 4 seconds. Exhale for 6, hold for 3. So let's try it together. So take a deep breath in. Let your breath out. Hold. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Hold. Breathe in. Out. Hold. In. Now just focus on the breath. Feel the pew or the chair on your legs and on your back. Feel the presence of God surrounding you. We lift up to you in prayer our prayers here in this sanctuary. And so if you want to lift up a prayer for communal prayer and finish it with, Lord, hear my prayer. And we will echo back, Lord, hear our prayer.
Lord, bless Amy's mom. Lord, hear my prayer.
Lord, hear our prayer.
A prayer for the safety and welfare of children around the world. Lord, hear my prayer.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Prayer for the Frennick family and the Chapman family. Lord, hear our prayer.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Prayer for peace, Lord, hear my cause. Lord, hear my prayer.
Lord, hear our prayer.
We pray this.
Their children as they go through a path of change. Lord, hear my prayer.
Lord, hear our prayer. We pray these prayers, those that are in our thoughts and our minds, those that have been spoken and unspoken. We lift them up to you, God. We pray the prayer that Jesus taught us, saying, Our Father,
who
who art
art
in heaven,
hallowed be thy name.
thy kingdom come,
Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Spirit of the
benedict us when we were all done and close the meeting that way. My bad. Big round of applause for the band. Thank you so much. All right, so before Jan leaves, I just have to have a point of order. Jan, you accept the nomination of yourself for a one-year appointment, correct?
I do.
Great, so just when we've heard that, then we can refer back to that later. All right. When you are ready, Madam Moderator, you may begin. We'll try to Robert's rules us down the correct path. Yeah.
Oh, so the minutes are also in the program that you've been following along. I need a motion from last year's meeting. I need a motion to accept the minutes.
Does everyone see the minutes? There's a page that says 2021 annual meeting minutes, and then the next page is the meeting minutes from 2021. 2 pages, front and back. Let's take a look at those. Because again, you haven't seen them. And if people are not prepared to approve these, just say no. We can always postpone to next week. Keep saying that. So is there a motion to accept the minutes for approval?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Point of order. You have to wait.
Oh,
Any
any
comments,
debate?
debate, conversation with that?
Any debate on the minutes? So all in favor? Any nays? Any abstentions? Minutes accepted. So old business, a motion to amend the Constitution. The leadership team may, in its sole discretion, determine that the meeting can be held solely by means of electronic communication. The electronic services and/or the platform through which the meeting is held shall be the place of the meeting for the purpose of this chapter.
So, go ahead. Let's not go out of order here. Go ahead. Sorry, I jumped in.
This, we talked about last year, it came into effect with the COVID happening where we had to do it electronically.
So, the reason I stopped myself is to not explain it yet. So, go by Robert's rules and say, do I have a motion to accept this proposal?
I was debating, I guess, sorry.
Yeah, right.
Do I have someone to motion to accept this proposal? Cheryl, second? Nick? All in favor?
No!
Oh, debate,
Any questions about this? Why we're doing this, what this is about? Like, can we explain more, or is it self-explanatory?
What section is this going into?
The section under meetings, which I think is section 2. I did not find, I got this particular thing like 3 days ago. So I have not found where it's going to go in the Constitution yet.
And how does it handle the voting?
So this enables us to be able to do it however we want. So what happened was the UCC with the community conference with their lawyer determined that there's a lot of gray area in Robert's rules about online voting and things of that nature, and having us live stream when people watch the live stream. So things that we've been doing naturally the last couple of years, and every time we've just established a standing rule for it, which is how you do it in Robert's rules. They're asking us to amend our Constitution so that it reflects that we can both have, the leadership team has the ability to determine how we're going to handle that meeting, whether it's via remote or a hybrid situation. But they're pretty confident that our Constitution needs to reflect that. If you don't feel comfortable passing this today, we can pass some standing rules that allows us to do this, and then we can come back and revisit this in a couple of weeks to have more fully explanation of this and exactly where it's going to go in the bylaws. Again, explained on my list a couple days ago.
Like last year, I don't know if everyone remembered, we watched it from home and people voted online. That's also going into this thing, so that it would be in the Constitution.
And the leadership team would be able to determine that. Go ahead, Ed.
Do we have anybody present remotely today?
I am unaware if there is anyone present remotely today. However, I do know that there are a few of our folks who are voting members who don't watch till Sunday night. And so we are still streaming for that purpose.
But there's no one who would need to vote right now.
There is, we have a quorum, and currently our Constitution states that our quorum is enough. And so we don't need anyone online to vote today. Nope.
Will a new constitution then be published to all the members?
Yes. Yeah, and so that's another conversation that we'll have in the course of conversation today about like, one of the steps that's happening, and conversations that are gonna come up on the bylaws and how we contracted out for that and all that stuff. So yeah, the hope is by July that we'll have a whole new set of bylaws, that some is freshly done for us, and all of it will be published then. But to your point, John, yeah, our bylaws are an absolute mess and they're all over the place and nobody has any of those in one spot. So I hear that.
Do I have any other conversation or questions? Do I have a motion to accept this proposal?
No, excuse, all in favor?
Oh, are we in favor?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're okay.
All in favor? Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Motion passed. So the other motion is to amend the church worship service schedule to be 10:30 starting on Sundays during the year and 6 p.m. start on Wednesdays during the summer. Cody, second. Kelly, any debate?
Yeah, question. You need to put, it's not well defined as to during the summer.
Yeah.
Summer.
We're trying to be pretty open with it because we keep changing it, we keep having to come back to you and change this particular thing of us having to ask every time to change and then getting it constitutionally amended is getting to be obnoxious, so,
Okay.
I was trying to leave it as vague as possible, but if you need definitive, we can have the definitive on that.
Okay, that's fine. I just know that like we used to, we'd go to like a summer service after, Mother's Day. After, the, celebrations in, Sunday school.
So would you be comfortable with an amendment that says the Sunday after Mother's Day could be, I would feel like Pentecost would make more sense, like the Sunday after Pentecost would make sense to switch over to summer schedule, yeah.
I think it's a little weather dependent though.
It
too.
is weather dependent for sure, yeah.
Usually these summer things, that's when it's nice out, we go meet out on the patio. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, do we need to set like a particular date, given that this would probably become weather dependent?
What do others think? Pardon? What do others think?
Or maybe just hypothetically say, generally to be viewed as Memorial Day weekend or Labor Day weekend.
Is that acceptable, John? To just generally say
Memorial Day to Labor Day?
Yeah.
that?
And then weather dependent as well.
We can add those words in. Does that seem like it's hitting the mark correctly?
Yeah.
I think you need to amend how it reads though, because Sundays during the year, that means the year, right?
Okay.
Like, I know you have the thing that is on Sundays, in the summer, it would be Wednesdays, but, I mean, I know we just.
Except for summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that the idea?
Yeah. Can you read the language?
So the motion is to amend the church worship service schedule to 10:30 to start on Sundays during the year, except for Memorial Day through Labor Day, where we will have a 6 p.m. start on Wednesdays during the summer,
Weather dependent.
weather depending.
Yeah? Is that good language, Julie?
I think it's more clear.
Okay.
All in favor?
I motion to accept the revised.
That's,
wording.
Oh, okay.
So John motions to accept the revised.
And a second for the revised, Nick?
Glad John did that, because I wasn't sure where we were.
All in favor? Opposed? 1, 2, 3 opposed. Abstention? The motion passed.
Can we talk about what the opposition was, if that's okay, just because I want to have it more like feeling like there's a consensus, is it just like moving to something else in the summer, or is that an offline conversation? Doesn't matter to me, either way.
Personally, Wednesdays on a weekday doesn't work for me. I can't get here, so.
Okay. that's something to think about. Okay, all right, thanks.
New business, review of the annual reports. Any questions, that you have from that?
Wash your mind. Let's review the annual report together. A lot of time, work, energy, effort went into this particular document here by a lot of people. And so I want to start with that. Like the leadership team, Sumaholic continues to be bless this congregation with her skills. And the finance team, everyone really had a hand in the Christian document. So let's just go through it page by page. Obviously, you know, this is our mission. Our mission's changed. Got changed this year. It's reflected there. A word from me, a word from Sue. Read that at your leisure. Most importantly, though, we start with our mission work. So, again, at your leisure, read the food pantry. This is what we've done this past year. I think it's really important to highlight the fact that we served 26,964 meals last year. Over almost 3,000 people between March and December. You served 2,696 meals last year with your time, your talents, and your treasures. You did that. This is the breakdown of our clients. And I need you at some point to stop and just really revel and read in what people are saying about how we're doing this. Because we're not just feeding people, we're not just feeding people's bodies, we're feeding their minds and their souls, and we're trying to help restore dignity to them and giving them a place to come that is trauma-informed and safe and caring and loving. And then there's our 5-year goal, Buffalo Food Hub. So, I'm not sure if all of you know, one of the things that we do here on Monday mornings is we get up at the crack of dawn and we go to the farms out in Niagara County. No, not really. We drive to Wegmans, and Wegmans gives us all of their scraps that would have been thrown away, and we sort through them and pull out the very best and very most edible produce and ready-to-eat meals and all those things, and then we package those up and we give a portion of it to our congregation. And you can see here on this chart, it shows the portion that congregation that our food pantry serves. But more importantly, we are dumping pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds of food out into 14215 and 14203, which are the neediest zip codes in Erie County. And so the money and time and talent and treasures that goes on Monday and that particular thing that we're doing, we are actually just doing justice by hunkering down in food apartheid, right? There is a lack of good quality food in the fruit belt, and a lack of good quality food on the east side. So we every day are striving on that Monday to get more and more fresh fruits and vegetables out to folks. Again, our 5-year plan. I think it's also really important to highlight in this here where our volunteer hours are coming from, right? So this past year, oh my goodness, that's so light. We had something like, where is it? 15, remember how many, 4,000? I have a hard number, I'm sorry that didn't get included in here, but something like 5,000 hours of volunteer hours, is that what it was? Oh, I believe. Yeah. And this is how it broke down. So the church, people specifically from the church that are volunteering, 15% of the volunteer hours across the church come from the church. 25% comes from paid staff. That's me, Sumaholic. And then the rest of it is from community volunteers. If you build it, they will come. Not to use a bad baseball metaphor, it's an amazing movie, that's not bad. Right, but seriously, if you build it, and they have, and our ministries continue to thrive because of our community partners and the amount of people that we have in this building that are helping us every day. You should read about the mission site and the plans moving forward on that. And there'll be time to have any conversations around any of this stuff. And the young adult service community that we're going to be starting here in the fall, and the money that's come along with that. Worship. Our worship plan looks a lot like, I have no idea what we're doing for worship. And so that's a conversation that needs to happen in the next year to continue to grow and build worship as an integral part of this. And to just do it consistently And perfectly, it would be great to have this service that we did this morning be the service that we're doing every Sunday. It was just, there was so much in the service this morning that brought life. We gotta figure that out. We're building the 5-year plan. Our church clerk report tells us how many, what our official numbers are right now. Voting in, regular members and non-voting members. Here's our, voting policy, member policy. And then we've got John's beautiful treasurer report. I added some graphics into it. Just want to make sure everyone understands this chart here. This chart is supposed to fold out. Sorry. Yep.
I don't need to go back, but I don't really need to talk about the mission side.
Will you guys go back to, can I finish and then we can go back to that? Yeah? Okay. We will go back to that. So, this here talks about our endowment, because I think that's really important for us to be thinking about. And a really serious conversation that we need to have today about our endowment and our endowment spending, right? So, it's really simple. The orange bars are where our endowment's at. 2011, we were less than $200,000 in our endowment. Trinity Gold merged with St. Stephen's. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. Got an infusion of cash, and we were able to gain for a few years. Plateaued. We've had some ups and downs. And then 2018, we had a rough year. The market had a rough year. We had a really huge deficit budget, kind of like the perfect storm of everything that we're always worried about when we're saying to you, if we pass a deficit budget, it could potentially eat away at our endowment. That happened this year, right? We see that we've had regular, stable, the endowment earnings have offset our budget consistently, except for that year. And then more treasurer reports, talking about how we spent our money last year. So this little beautiful pie is here. And how much we took out of our endowment. All right, questions? John, young adult service community, mission site, which part? So one of the parts of the long-term plan here is that we have to be able to, this is going to talk about our building, we have to be able to utilize every available inch of space in the building rental-wise. And that includes a sanctuary. And there's conversation happening about what we're going to talk about that today, what we're going to do with the sanctuary. But one of the things is that we always intended on, before my time here, that's why the showers are here, we've had youth groups in here, for this to be a space where people are coming to be for a mission site. And so we have now announced that on the national level. We are a mission site. We told the denomination we're a mission site. We are moving our bylaws and getting 501c3 status to be a religious institution that also does worship, but that is a 501c3. So there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to be happening kind of along that line to line us up that way. And the plan is to become the Back Bay mission of the Northeast. That is the plan, to have people come here to be doing food, security, justice work, youth, adults, staying in our building, renting the space out, paying us, paying for curtailing our costs.
I guess I'm trying to understand, you're expecting someone to live in the building?
Yeah.
Come September?
Correct. Yes. So we got a grant, January, a couple of weeks ago actually, that was $6,000 to help us renovate some spaces and provide a living wage for this young person who's going to come to help us. And so we're looking at somebody between the ages of 18 and 27 who might take a gap, maybe taking a gap year. Maybe somebody who's just gone to seminary and he hasn't gotten a job yet, because there's this weird spot between when you finish seminary and you haven't quite finished ordination up and you got stuff that you have to do. So maybe somebody like that is looking for something, a little bit of money and some ministry experience for their resume. Or maybe just some college kid.
I'm struggling with living here.
Sure.
In the building.
Sure.
How does Amherst allow us to, the town of Amherst allow someone to live here?
So the places the 3 rooms that we're kind of talking about are the offices upstairs or the nursery. I don't think that we've actually settled on yet which one that's going to be. And because it has egresses and it's temporary residence, the town of Amherst doesn't seem to have a problem with it. We kind of settled this with Family Promise, that they were you're fine. And
But it's not temporary though, right? Because
It
they
is.
didn't make it permanent.
it's a 9-month position, so it's temporary.
So he's only gonna be here for how long?
It'd be like a long-term Airbnb.
Right.
Did you say 9 months?
9 months, yep.
What is this person's job type? Because I looked at Saxon and all that other stuff.
So the person's job title, I mean, I don't know if they're gonna have a job title. Part of the position here would be like an intern. It'd be somebody who'd be here to help out with moving our ministries forward, specifically working on the mission site to get that set up and move forward with bringing people in and doing all of the pieces that have to kind of be done with that. So mission site director, I guess, maybe not director. I don't know what the title would be. Right now, they're just the young adult service coordinator that's gonna, or young adult service student who's gonna be here, just in partnership with us. Whether that's, helping with the food pantry or like whatever we need. So it's just an extra body that's learned, that's pastoral, that's prophetic, and is here doing ministry with us. I don't know what that exactly looks like yet, but it's gonna look pretty amazing when we get there. But I don't know if they're gonna have, that this person's actually gonna be somebody who has like handy person skills or has, like the ability to like do, to replace John or things like that. Does that answer your question, Ben? That's a good question.
I noticed in the building plan, it mentions, like in a year, maybe looking at selling the building again. And I thought the last time that we looked at that, like it was difficult to sell a church building because there's so many of them out there trying to be sold.
So our experience, I want to have an open conversation about this particular thing, which is why this is in here. The leadership team has been talking about finding a partner that can come in and take over our building so that we can continue to be here, but not have to have the responsibilities of the building. If you look, it saves us a fair amount of money, $5,000-$6,000 a year to not be responsible for this building. I don't know, when we do the cost benefit analysis, I know that it ends up coming out the same what it would cost to rent back. But not having to have the brain for any of us that are working, doing the mission site, thinking about building stuff, is one of the reasons why we're thinking about that. And also, if we can sell this building for $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, then that really infuses our ability to do ministry. And also, in the same breath, where we are, this particular building and this particular ministry and this particular time and this particular pace, I am not in any urgency to push or lead us out of this building. Because we hear time and time again from our ministry partners that the fact that we are serving the city, but in the suburbs, is so safe for so many people. Like, that's why we have so many volunteers here, because they can do the things that make them feel really good, but that don't have to go to the city to do that.
And are we not hiring a sexton to manage the building?
That's the plan, yep, is to hire a sexton manager.
So you wouldn't have the building to worry about?
Correct. But I think that we continue to be open to, if the perfect unicorn walks in and is like, hey, do you want to stay in your building for $500 a year and we'll take responsibility for it, then we'd be like, of course we will, right? But I think that we've had some offers on the building and we've turned those down because they just didn't make sense for our ministry. They didn't make sense for our mission and our vision. We had the Church of Christ that came in, which is polar opposite of us. And the leadership team very carefully discerned that the money was not enough for us to, no money would be enough for us to leave this space and turn it over to someone who is diametrically opposed to what we're building here in the community. So, and I was really proud of that decision because that was a hard decision. There was a lot of money on the table for that, and lots of conversation around it. And I didn't have any guiding force on that. They just were like, what are you even talking? Why are you even bring this to me? More questions? So no, we're not selling the building tomorrow. That's not our plan or intention, but again, if that unicorn comes along, we want to have people be aware that like, we're having conversations, right? But our goal, our vision, is for us to be the church, the community center, the space in this time, and this space, and this community that's serving all of Erie County. And so far it's working, and we've gotten lots of positive feedback about that.
Any other questions?
How many other mission centers are there in the area?
I'm sorry?
How many other mission centers?
There are 6 mission sites in the whole country. There are 0 in this area. And with the YAC, one of the things that was really great, and one of the reasons why we jumped at that, not only we get a person here that we get to just have an extra body here, which is amazing, but also that it connected us denominationally and me to a group of leaders who are doing this. So a group of 15 leaders who are doing camps and mission sites. That's different and outside, but this is really where ministry is headed. And so the denomination is very excited about this step that we've taken. Yeah, but there's only 7 in the country. Back Bay Mission is the biggest one. I don't know if anyone's heard of Back Bay Mission.
I want to thank the congregation and everybody who helps with the food pantry. It's a good seller. Can we try to recruit these people who are serving with food to come to our congregation, help volunteer?
Yeah. I mean, I think that has been an easy turnover. We have I don't know what the percentage of folks who we have volunteering in the food pantry are actually food pantry guests. It's like probably half, maybe, quarter, third.
Maybe a quarter.
Yeah. So we are asking our folks who are receiving food from us if they want to come back and help. That's not a requirement to receive food. But we also, there's somebody who is like in the high level management of the church, always here when our folks are here, and are always saying that, we had folks who came for Christmas Eve that were from our food pantry. And so we know with church, it's really hard, right? Like it's hard, but food pantry isn't. And so that's the hope, is that these folks will start turning over to be church members, and they may never.
And
So-
we do ask them, a lot of them are associated with their own home churches, but their churches don't offer, an opportunity for them to serve and help out. But I'm always down there saying, so, do you have a church? What church do you go to? And some of them are, we have a couple that are on the line, like, I think I'm gonna come, so I just keeping that little bug in their ear.
So I don't know if we can make out flyers, because I know we used to have work days around the church, and some of our past members were always handy. So if we have trays, and I know we talked about talking about the lawnmower, putting it on the lawn, try to save money that way.
Yeah.
And people, if they have time during the summer, some people get bored and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I'm not opposed to that. I think that, I know the leadership team has said those similar things. I just don't know if there's been any money to spearhead it or organize that particular. You writing that down? Sue's writing that down. Thanks, man. Yes, Ms. Thomas, what can you do? Thank you for raising your hand this time. Good job.
I know 2 minutes I have. Ruth Reese and I run the food pantry upstairs, the farmer's market. And we end up getting in conversations with people, so we always talk about and always suggest, I simply say, we have a service at 10:30, which you might find very meaningful, but we've had people tell us their whole life stories, and so, it's,
Sue and I heard a lot about that on our yard sale in the front of the church.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's how we got Ruth to help you out, right?
It is.
Well, that's word of mouth.
well, she's,
And I think to your point, Bill, the bigger point here is we're not advertising for our worship service. So what are we doing about that? And I think that's reflected in the the worship service is I don't know over here. And we really need to think about that. We really need to drive in a direction that makes sense. And we haven't done that. And I have not, since I've been here, unlocked worship. It's been such a sticky point in this particular congregation. So I know that I need help with that. And I think when Cody, the plan is for Cody to come on and to help us with that. Whatever that looks like. But your point is we have not done any advertising. We started to, and then we didn't because of COVID. So, yeah.
Reading a book called Not Your Parents' Offering Plate, suggesting that different ways. The point of the author is that the only thing that the church has to sell, our product, is transformed lives. That's the purpose of the church, to transform lives.
And Sarah, what I hear Bill saying is, he wants to help transform lives. He thinks this church is transformational. and like how we're getting the word out. So that's what you're saying though, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like here's a great opportunity for us to make sure that we're evangelizing to the folks who we're giving food to with just more than, just more than the food.
Yeah, we're doing something that's great that you guys started on.
Yeah.
So it can be
So-
a whole one.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's beautiful. Any other questions?
Okay, let's go on to the presentation of the budget, and John, Rob, you're gonna take that?
Are you going to take that?
Will you take that, or, well, they can take questions.
So here we have the budget proposal. This beautiful, wonderful, amazing piece. Yes.
Looking at the church clerk report, are we allowed to ask, like, the people who were transferred or withdrawn, sort of what some of the reasons were for that? Or is that about the things to identify?
You know, we,
Can you?
the question was, oh, sorry, right.
My question was for the church clerk report, for people who transferred or withdrew from the church, what some of the reasons for that?
A lot of times we just get, something from another church that says, you know, they've become members, please rescind your membership. Sometimes we just get, at this time, this is not fitting for me, this is not working, please rescind my membership. Sometimes we just get, please rescind my membership.
So, and when we follow up, sometimes people will talk, sometimes people won't. Mostly, folks that our membership decline that we saw this past year was really because we stayed sheltered and other churches opened up. And so we made the choice to stay sheltered. And we also very clearly said to the congregation, like, we're heading in a missional direction. Worship's not going to be our focus anymore. And so people who were like, well, worship is the only reason that I'm here, were like, I'm going to go find something else to worship, and I can't really sit in here until you figure this out. And so I think there was some folks that have left because of that, just because and we've stutter-stepped a lot on worship, for sure. Like, it's like we get going, and then we close, and then we get in. So I think COVID's really scary, and we have to continue to make a policy and a plan about how we're going to respond in this is now endemic versus being reactive to numbers and stuff like that. And so we sat down and we have policy, and so I'm hoping that the policy will shape our ability in the future, and in the conversations we're going to have about worship will help people who we've lost to come back, but more importantly, help to open up the doors for other folks to come in. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. So you asked to go back.
Excuse me, I don't know the rest of it.
So the budget proposal here. So John prepared the proposal, and then we put it into this beautiful format here. So overall, the financial assets of St. Stephen's Bethlehem UCC only decreased approximately $23,000, which is absolutely amazing. And blessed be the name of the Lord. We ran a $200,000 deficit budget last year. Is that what it was that we ended up making up? Short of $22,000 between the everything. So really was great. All right. So first page is the endowment. And again, just reiterates the same thing as the annual report. Our endowment is decreasing. So here's just this how our endowment has decreased over the years. And then this one here is how much our endowment has earned or lost. And in the years where it's increased, it's because we reinvested our endowment earnings. And in the year where it hasn't or it's decreased, it's because we've spent our endowment earnings and our savings account. So the way our endowment works, we'll just make sure everyone understands this, it makes money for us. And we use that money to help support all of our programming, right, in accordance with our endowment rules. And then at the end of the year, we should be putting, like, in a perfect world, we'd be taking all of the money that we're making on our endowment and putting it back into our endowment so we could make more money, right? But what we're doing right now is we're spending that money that we're making, and we're spending our savings account too, which is fine for the situation that we're in, but it's not a long-term strategy. It's not a long-term plan. And we've been saying, the finance team's been saying this for years, this is not a long-term strategy, it's not a long-term plan. Does everyone understand this page? Here's the proposed budget for this year. We have changed the way we're doing our budget this year. So before it was just like this long line of numbers and it didn't really, and it coordinated to our ministry areas. Now we're topical. Because we want everyone to think about, this is how we're all thinking about this. Our building, our mission, our worship, our, what it costs us to do business, our operational expenses, and then our costs for our congregation. So it's just a bird's eye view of what we're spending this year, what we're proposing to spend this year. So turn to the next page, that's the mission budget. Everything is color-coded, John's amazing. Everything is color-coded. It all color codes out throughout the entire thing. If it's pink, it's mission. Even in your file that you have that has all the stuff randomly today, the one that we were using for the worship service, that in the back has a color-coded, detailed budget. If you're like, I really want to know how much money we're spending on grapes. It's not that detailed, but you know what I mean. Those things matter to you. It's there and it's color-coded. You did a great job with Jackie.
So if you're having difficulty reading the pamphlet, in the handout with the treasurer's report, had the same detail, but it's more readable.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah, this is not
It's tiny.
it is tiny. And we can fix that and republish this so it's less tiny for folks. But we want to show people if it's yellow, it means there was an increase. And then again, this is the percentage of how we're spending our money in that area. A big chunk is staffing. So for this money, 25% of the hours that we're putting into our mission area, that money that's it right there. It's my time and Sue's time. And then the next biggest expense, as it should be, is our food for our food pantry. So there's the main reason for the increase this year is on the next page, and that's because we've hired a grant writer. In 2021, we began working with a local grant writer. Her name's Jen Potter. Her cost is $75 per hour, and we paid her for $750 worth of work, and between August and December. And that $750 yielded us 2 grants from the UCC totaling $10,000. We just found out actually Friday that we got the second grant, which was up to $10,000, so that's amazing. For some unbudgeted items like Mission Center expansion and some budget items, the sexton. So the denominations come in with $5,000 additional for the sexton if we are willing to hire a recent Afghan refugee. So if we can find someone to fit that niche, we have $5,000 more. If we can't, then we don't. So every dollar we spent in this area in 2021 yielded us $13.33 in return. And for this next budget year, I'm planning a 20-to-1 return on investment, with half of that being reinvested into our budget, so about $37,000. Yes?
Does our new 501c does that, will we apply to grants outside of the denomination?
Correct. That is the sole reason why we're moving to a 501c instead, is because it opens up the opportunity for us to cover our budget gap with grants from everywhere.
Okay, cool.
Is the Sexton grant a one-time grant or is it yearly?
It is renewable yearly, up to 3 years.
So at 3 years, we have to be able to sustain that salary position on our own.
Correct, and so the hope is with this particular person is that in 3 years, so what's happening with Afghan refugee folks is that these are folks who were high-level folks over in Afghanistan who were allies with the U.S. government and had to leave when Afghanistan fell. And so they're being resettled. These are highly trained interpreters or things like that. And so the thought is that, or accountants, doctors, is that they are going to work with the International Institute to be able to transfer their their qualifications over here. And so in 3 years, they'd be off doing their other job. And so that's kind of the thought is in 3 years, we'd be looking at something different, hopefully a different position where we'd be hiring maybe not hiring, or maybe hiring on full-time and having other things offset.
Next is the worship budget.
So let's keep going here. So the other thing we're asking is to be able to hire a person who is in charge of development. and building rental. So one of the things that we found with this particular, with our plan, this building, is that we don't use this building as much as we possibly can. And so if we had someone who was in charge of crafting for us a development plan that tells us how to fundraise and how we should get into stuff, instead of it, like us piecing this together, having a professional come in and do this. And also have them in charge of managing our building rentals, and so it's not all on Sue, who has a plate that's this big and keeps getting stuff piled onto in her 20 hours of work week. That we would bring this person in and they would fundraise, and they would help us rent the building out. And the plan is with that is that they'd be required to, at least the first year, make their salary back. And I think it's doable to get $5,000 more rental out of this space, within 8 to 9 months of hiring that person. So, questions? Again, I think with the development person too, my concern is it's a little unicorny, that we're gonna try to find somebody who's willing to do this job for $1,100. But we found Sue, so just feel like, we can pray.
So where did you come from? Are there more here?
And then the food pantry increased by 7% because we were growing exponentially. Every 4 months, we're almost doubling our folks. So, and that's because we do it better. We're nicer. It's easy, and God's working here. So.
Have another question?
Yes, sir.
What are Sue's increased responsibilities for this year?
Oh, so Sue got herself a raise last year, and she did that because Sue's amazing. And one of the things that she's doing as part of her increased responsibilities is she's the volunteer coordinator. So a majority of her job right now is really coordinating getting all of our volunteers here, advertising and doing all of those things. There's paperwork we have to get. We are trying to get background checks in place for folks so that we're doing this right all the time. And so Sue's been working on getting those pieces into place. So that's been a portion of her job. I think probably maybe a third of your time has gone to that, you think? Yeah. And then the other time, she, working on worship for sure, but she really is working more than 20 hours a week at this point, to my constant yelling at her. Doesn't seem to matter. Amy, can you yell at her? Yes.
I'm a member, so
Right, she gets
also volunteer.
Right, that's what she's
Yes,
saying.
a member.
But also, the thing that is really involved in different pieces of our ministry. She's the one that's right now running the Food and Hub on Monday mornings. Which I don't know if that's volunteer or paid, but that's one of the things she does in the building. And just all around doing the administrative work that is outside of inventory for the food pantry, which is a lot. I mean, and everything else too. And wrangling me, John, like that's worth $20 an hour right there. John says, nodding his head. Yes, Bill, are you gonna jump on the wrangling? No, something else. Okay, we're gonna move on then.
Is the staff working in the building? Because I read in something that you're gonna move the offices to the music room.
We're gonna move the office to the music room. You're here what, 2 days a week?
Mondays and whatever.
Yeah. Not really. That's why we're just gonna put a little area in a music room to but also that's turning into inventory. Major is gonna take back and we're gonna use the music room for a stock room, but also the office. Again, trying to free up these spaces upstairs to be able to rent this out and get some income before we have to touch the sanctuary. Questions? Does that answer your question? All right, and so the cost benefit here for for our $90,000 this year, we're predicting that we should be able to feed about 90,000 meals. That's about $1.07 a meal, which for a first year, full year, pretty low for us to hit. That's a pretty good return on investment there. $1.07 is getting all that stuff. So I'm proud of that number. Any questions before we move on to the worship budget? All right, same thing. Everything is laid out in the same exact way. We tried to make this really just all flow. Again, what our worship budget goes to, mostly is staff time, the details are underneath it. Music, so a third of my salary in housing, Matt's salary, the new part-time admin assistant, everything related to worship. So we're asking for $52,813, or an 18% increase in the budget this year. Mostly the budget increase is from this worship admin, again, adding another piece in for another person who's gonna solely focus on doing the work of the worship service. And they're also gonna be the bookkeeper, so to try to get that bookkeeper job to be more of a part-time job versus just what John's doing right now, and to make it a little more attractive, we add that other piece on, because we could definitely need help, or could use the help on the administration side. And so our goal is to have 54 church services this year, an average of 30 people per service, which I know that seems like a lot. And so that'll give us, but totally doable, 30 people is totally doable. It's $30 per person per service, or $970 per service. Any questions? All right, so next, the building costs us $50,790, and it's 18% of our budget. And this is mostly, again, custodial, mostly staff. When we look at our budget's very staff heavy. Custodial supplies, insurance, taxes, property maintenance, contracts. Okay. And if you can see this year, we did take not a lot, we took some chunks out of, we lowered our Johnson controls, now we have the rings in place. We got rid of the turf doctor because Jan just wants everything to just grow as it needs to grow. She's not here, so I can say that. That's what she said in the meeting. It's in the minutes. And then, but we still haven't figured out this thing that Bill was talking about before about the $9,000 we're spending a year for cutting the lawn and plowing. I think that's part of conversations we keep having, and Rob keeps talking us out of, rightfully so, of doing that, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense with the size of our congregation to try to also manage that at this point. But if we have a sexton on, it might be something that we can do, right? All of that. Are there any questions about this? So our building is really an asset. It's on the next page there, and it really is an asset. And like I said, folks in the community, both through the retired senior volunteer program and through the Yamish Yes and the Chippewa Yes program, are really excited to have us here doing this kind of work, because again, it keeps them in the security of the suburbs and allows them to do the work in the city. I understand that from a certain point of view, we need to start addressing that and systemic racism and things like that. So that's in the back of my mind about having conversations around that, because there's a problem of racism everywhere, but this is kind of a product of that. So we're capitalizing on that, but also I think that at some point we're going to need to start having conversations kind of permeate us around that as well. Any other questions? Okay. Operations cost, again, this is just the cost of doing business. Even if we were to sell our building, if we don't remove our staff, and just the basic things we need to do in order to keep staff and keep pastor and keep the lights on, that's in the operations budget. And a lot of that stuff can't be offset by grants. That's really has to, when we start looking at stuff and bringing money in, that's really where it goes towards first and foremost is operations. It's easy to raise money for food. It's not easy to raise money for lights on. So next page, you've got the operation costs on there, and then the budget increase. We tried to make our cuts in that area, but it just didn't work. So, if you look at the next page, this is where we have right now, with what we think will be based on last year, and based on our building rentals, we have a 71% unfunded budget. And so our budget's $289,000. So here is my proposal, leadership team's proposal, to increase that. To decrease that 71% unfunded gap. So first, we need to increase our tithe. We have not sent out an annual campaign this year yet, because there has not, we didn't have a budget. We did have a budget. We didn't get everything together. And so the annual campaign hasn't happened. So that's gonna happen next week. We're gonna start next week asking people directly for money. And it's gonna be direct conversations with folks of like, hey, you gave this much last year. We're looking for this much of an increase. Is that possible? We know for some folks it just isn't possible. And we won't have those uncomfortable conversations if it isn't, right? But for a lot of folks who are sitting here right now, it is possible for us to give more. I know for me, exactly, it's not enough. I have more that I can give than I do right now. And so we're gonna ask people to search their hearts. There's not gonna be a minimum, like you have to give this amount, but we're saying, like, if everyone could give this amount, then it would be easier for us to hit our budget. And again, more if you can, less if you can. Equal sacrifice, not equal contribution. And we do know that our folks who don't give as much money because they can't give a lot in their time. And so it all balances out. The next thing is, again, talking about this grant writer, again, the expectation that about half of the money that we're bringing in will go towards the budget and not new programming.
So it will be split.
So it's, yeah. Again, the development person, so 4% of the budget should come from the development person. She should be able to, I'm seeing this anymore. They should be able to cover that budget gap, right, that they're creating. And then the expectation is that they're gonna get $5,000 more in building rental. Currently, we rent our building out at this moment for $21,660 a year. So it's up from the $10,000 last year. And if you look at the past numbers, like even pre-COVID, we were only at like $9,000 a year for building rental. So this is double where we were pre-COVID. And we're really seeing a need in the community right now for community spaces that are rented at reasonable rates. And we are open and willing to be partners with anybody. And our ministry grows bigger by offering that spaces with Heritage, with the Gay Lesbian Youth Services here in the building. It really does make us a more robust ministry to have life in our building. And all of our acres, and so many acres. Any questions? And then the endowment earnings. So $100,000 is going to come from endowment earnings, and we say this every year. And I need to reemphasize the same thing the finance team tells us every year. You can't keep doing this. At some point, the market's going to catch up with us, and we're going to, like, if at the point in which we have another 2018 again, that's it, right? Like, we have to make drastic changes. And so it is scary to place a budget in front of you that has a $117,000 deficit, knowing that the stock market may or may not do what we need it to do. And knowing that $117,000 plus whatever we lose in the stock market could be a third of our net. This is a robust, engaged, mission-driven plan. And it's grandiose, and it is out there, and I think it's totally achievable. Are those yours? All right, those are yours. Do you need them? Is that your thing? And so this pie chart on the back page here shows you with the predicted budget deficit makeup. We should only have to make up about $18,000 in fundraisers if everyone tithes. If we can get $37,000 out of our grant writer. If we hire a development person on, the development person can gain their $17,000. And if we use that, we increase our building rental and use the endowment earnings. Still need to make up $17,000. Questions, comments, concerns? Do you need to go?
We need the laptop.
Oh. Use the iPad, please. The iPad will work, hit the system the same way. I don't know if everyone knows, but our ordering system, one of the reasons why we're being wildly successful is online. And we have one laptop for both downstairs and upstairs. Any other questions? All right. So here, and you'll be hearing about this the next month, part of Lent. What we're asking for a commitment from voting members of the congregation to look at their finances and give 10%. And if that seems like a lot, because it is a lot for a lot of people, $50 a week would help a lot. And so that's what I ask. Prayerfully discern where it is your money is, and whether you believe in what this congregation is doing. I got some questions at the bottom for you. And so, really, the questions you need to ask yourself while discerning is, do I believe in the mission, vision, and leadership of St. Stephen's? Am I being called to support this mission work, feeding body, mind, and soul? Is St. Stephen's faithfully, sustainably investing my money to bring out the kingdom of God into the world? Is the return on investment good? God may be calling you to put your money elsewhere. And does it feel good to give? And so the last thing is, I do really want to talk on this last page, the plan to close this budget gap, because it's $150,000 a year that we have to close. And so the plan is that in the next few years, we're going to start using less and less of our endowment earnings to cover our budget. So currently, 40% of our budget is being used to covered by the endowment. And next year, it'll be 20, and the year after that, hopefully, we'll be reinvesting all of that money back to rebuild our endowment. So that's by renting the building out more, by having more mission trips in there, by increasing folks in worship. All right, questions, comments, concerns? Do you need more time? Really, if people are ready to vote, cool. If you're not, let's take the time to really think about this. This is a huge step. It's a huge decision. And we don't need to rush this through. We can always postpone, we can always vote online. All those things are possible. Kelly?
I would just like to applaud all the effort that you guys put into the You made it very compelling. There's so much thought that went into this. Thank you.
Thank you. So, the serious and gravity of this moment has, I think, affected all leadership. It's been reflected in what we've got from today. All right.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask if there's a motion to adopt this budget. Cody, a second? Nick?
Any discussion?
Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? One. Any abstentions? Three.
I don't know what is that. Is it 2/3 or simple majority? Does anyone know? Robert's rules.
Simple
I think it's
majority.
2/3 on the budget, actually. And there was 1 no and 3 abstentions, and how many are in the room? Math, Bill, what's the math on that?
I don't know who lost.
There was 18 Jan left. Yeah,
17 now. So 4, 1 no, 3 abstentions.
So it's
17.
25%.
It's how much?
If it's, we've had 17 and 4 voted no or abstention,
Yeah.
that's under 25%.
Just the motion.
Yeah, so the budget passed.
So budget has passed. So, the nominating committee is, nominating Amy and Jan for a one-year term, and as you heard before, Jan agreed before she had to leave for a prior engagement. Amy, do you accept a one-year term?
Yes.
Okay. has nominated Cody for a 3-year term. Cody, have you accepted?
Yes, I have.
And Sue's been the other nomination for the other full term, and you accept, Madam.
Yes.
Excellent. Can I, go ahead, English, no, she can't, so do I have, a nomination, exception, how do we say this? I need someone to accept the nominating report.
I make that motion.
Thank you, that's the words. I knew between us all we'd have a motion, the words. Craig, accepts motion, do I have a second? Nick, is there any questions, any debate?
And Cheryl's still on it.
Cheryl's still on, she has a 2-year term, and there's one open 2-year term. Yep, Cheryl has 2 years left in her term. All in favor?
That might change my view, I might need to withdraw.
If Cheryl's gonna be on for 2 years? You actually literally have already accepted.
Too late.
It's too late. Sorry, you'll have to resign. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passed. So the last thing is, we have one open seat, it's a 2-year seat, are there any nominations from the floor? And with nothing being said, I will move that right along. Go ahead.
New business, move that the leadership team of St. Stephen's Bethlehem UCC be authorized and enabled to act as a corporate agent in business matters that may come up before it, to include the withdrawal of funds following the guidelines of the endowment funds.
Perfunctory. We have to do this every year in order to continue to be a religious corporation.
Look, John.
I motion to accept.
John motions.
John motion, second. Cheryl? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstention? Cheryl, you had your hand raised for all of them. Any abstentions? Motion passed. Any announcements anyone wants to, that anyone has? Okay.
So I am super proud of us in this meeting here. This is, I think, our best meeting that we've done to date. So I just want to give you all those applause. It's been really great. Just, nice, super discourse and all of that. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
We don't have to.
All right.
So now, may God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May God lift you up and give you wholeness, harmony, hope, shalom, now and always. Our worship concludes. Our service continues. God's word is within you. Go now to love and serve the Lord. Amen.
Amen.